나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hi, everyone. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for being here. Deeply appreciate your support, your presence, your participation, your practice. We're going to continue with the opening of the eyes, but I wanted to take a moment to talk about something that it's something of a personal experience, but I think all of us, especially as Buddhist practitioners of the Lotus Sutra, that we can confront from time to time, and sometimes it lasts too long. I was listening to the Majority Report. Many of you may be aware of Sam Cedar and Emma Vigeland. I love Emma. She has an amazing perspective on the world. Sam, very brilliant man. I get annoyed with his particular style of delivery, a lot of ahs and ums, and I get sick of hearing that. But talk about a pet peeve, huh? I have my own, so fully aware. But he had a caller, and this young woman, a very brilliant caller, was discussing something that I think in our time, and I've certainly seen it evolve in my lifetime, which is such a short period of time. It's amazing. I'm sitting here, I'm overwhelmed by the amount of change that I've witnessed in my own life. I used to talk about this about our grandparents and great-grandparents. And could you imagine being around when flight became a thing? It's important to put things into that kind of perspective. And I want to say this because all of us, whether you've been practicing a month or 1,000 years, as our mind, because what we're doing as we practice is opening our minds to how to say it, a more acute awareness of everything, right? The function of everything, what's going on. And so today we're faced with, I'll just get to it, okay? Today we're faced with, we're inundated, as you've heard me say 1,000 times, by so much information, whether it's on your phone or on your computer or on your laptop or on in your face, just everywhere you go. And conversely, as my 87-year-old mother struggles with all the time, is that if you don't have a cell phone, you're basically like excised from societal connection. And I don't mean social media. I mean, I need to buy groceries. And without a phone, somehow I have impediments now just to buy groceries. How did that happen? Do you see what I'm starting to point to? And the reason I say it this way is because I think we have just a couple of choices in this situation. I think for a lot of the time and for a lot of the people, and it's not always the same people, I think it varies. I think we've all experienced moments when we're so overwhelmed by this sheer plethora of noise coming at us that we don't necessarily we don't shut down. We do shut down, but we shut down in this very novel way. We turn all of this information into just that, noise. And we see ourselves as just kind of floating through it and picking and choosing things we want to pay attention to as though that was a skill, right? And I'm saying we don't do it consciously. We do it out of a need to survive this plethora of information. Or we pick an area and we seize upon it and we possess it and we dive into it and we're completely obsessed in that area. Yeah. And that's almost like reaching for a branch as you're floating down the rapids, just trying to get a hold on something. It's quite a desperate thing. But we can invest a hell of a lot of our very existence on that. And that's why we live in a world of such extreme emotion, right? Because we're so invested. I've got this branch I'm not letting go. Yeah. Whether that means your social identity, your cultural identity politics. Do you see what I'm saying? We are identifying nature seizes upon whatever. Insert obsession here. And that becomes the core of who you are. Of course that's an illusion, but when you're in it, you don't see the illusion. You're just hanging on for dear life. And as I'm saying all of this, I so understand this caller. So yeah, you either blissfully go along without investing in anything and just buy stuff, be a good consumer. Right? And nothing phases you, which is, it's so pathetic to think about. That's just a lost mind. Being a cog without being a wheel. Or either through will or by accident, something sparks. And when that spark happens, you're very motivated to get into it because that feels like life. The rest of it is so heavy. We struggle with feeling alive. I hope this is touching you in some way because I think it's a universal today that you either just kind of shut down and go with the wind, doing what everyone else tells you to do, what every commercial tells you to do, what the sale at Nordstrom tells you to do, what your friends go, and you all go merrily along, and nobody really thinks about anything. It's all identity politics. How will I look? How do I look? How will people see me? We don't even think that deeply, how will people see me? We just look at our numbers. our clicks. I mean, whether you're on Twitter or social media or not, and I don't believe that nobody is, we do the same thing in the real world rather than the digital world. Everything is that construct now. So what's the point? What am I getting at? The overwhelming nature of the whole thing is very much what I want to address. Because as Buddhists, whether or not we focus on it, this is very much on our minds. Whether locally to our person or our environments or the world, it's just a different scope of the same problem, okay? The same overwhelming nature of how everything seems to have its own inertia, which it does. And how, as an individual, do you, does this caller find a reason to go on, because it can seem like you're this little tiny voice trying to express itself without even knowing quite what it is you're wanting to say in this massive ocean with horizon lines, with nothing but ocean of this droning. And there's this sense, this little tiny voice in you, and you don't want to hear it. It's always there. And sometimes you hear it and it's frighteningly loud. Give up. Just give up. Have any of you heard that? It happens in our practice all the time. As our mind opens and becomes more aware of what's going on, life, without being an ostrich, right? We get a hint. And sometimes after a while, you keep chanting, you keep seeing, you're like, I just want to stick my head under the covers. I don't want to do this anymore. But here's the thing, and it's something that Sam Cedar said, and I thought it was brilliant. He said, when you look at the history of humanity, he didn't say it in these words, but basically what he was saying was, all great social change, all changes in the paradigm, they didn't come from the mass majority of the population changing its mind. Right? And I talk about this directly all the time. Chanting, changing our own minds, opening our Buddhahood, ripples out and affects others around us. And you see, as profound as that is, that other awareness, that social awareness says, yeah, but you're such a tiny little island. What can you hope to accomplish? Isn't it futile what you're doing? Oh, isn't this practice just this entertainment of making, like scratching an itch and now you feel better for a moment? And even if you scratch somebody else's back and they feel better, how's that going to change the world? Right? Because I always talk about, as Nichiren does, changing the world around us is a benefit of our own enlightenment. It's like a feedback loop. But the nature of the ignorance is so massive, it can seem laughable that we think that. But again, back to Sam. He said, every major movement, change, social change, political change in our history hasn't been done by flipping the majority. It's been done by a very small percentage of people. a very small group percentage, by their very existence, by what they do, can flip an entire country in its laws, in its governance, in its social structure. It happens all the time. It could be a song. And suddenly the whole world is, I'd like to make the world to sing. And for decades, minds are influenced. Minds are changed. Remember that. That's inspiring. That says we can't possibly know how the next wave, moment-to-moment formations of potential around us doesn't suddenly go pink and change the color of everything. It only takes a moment. And it only takes a mind. It may seem a small thing, but that small thing, I think, has kept my courage and my dedication to this practice going more than I even think I'd be willing to admit to myself. Just that singular thought of inspiring someone else, changing a mind, saying just the right words in the right way to be heard in just the right way by somebody who just happens to be needing to hear those words in the way that they're hearing them. That could be all it takes to perform a huge shift of mind. Because all of us, even the most ignorant, far removed mind on the other side of the planet doing in war, doing violent things, or trying to survive, do great things. We're connected. And with the conviction of our manifestation of Buddhahood, we can ripple out and see the world change around us. It's a confidence builder. And the more you practice, the more you start to see it in your own life. But that's the hardest thing for us to see, isn't it? It's just our nature. But when we see it around us, we pick up on it. And I guess what Sam reminded me of is that, yeah, we tend to be really insular and think only me, in this moment. But if you relax a little bit and look at the bigger picture, oh yeah, the Beatles, Elvis, Shakyamuni, Nichiren, Maoists. Look throughout history of small, tiny percentages of people who've affected us to this very day, forms of government to this very day, some incredibly negatively, and some inspiring and incredible. Who was it who had the idea to go land on the moon? Look at what we're doing now, tripping all over ourselves trying to get back there. Because we figured that out, that it was even possible. But how many people were influenced? Whoever thought of a career as an astronaut until that became popular knowledge? And that just started with a few people. Seriously, how many movements, how many things can you count in your world today that seem indelible, like Amazon? It's always been here. No, it was some guy's idea to provide a library for people looking for books because libraries were dying out. And a lot of books out of print. And so somebody thought, what if I make all of these things available online and we just print them when people order them and we don't have to have massive... Chloe. She's having so much trouble breathing. Ugh. She grounds me a little bit. Anyway, so that's all I want to talk about. I hope it inspires you to keep chanting, keep learning, growing this practice, because your life will reflect it. And you do matter. You do change the world. And that change happens here first in your mind. It really, really, really does work that way. All right. This morning's pep talk. All right, let's read a little bit more of this opening of the eyes, Gosho. See what Nichiren has to say about why do heavenly beings not protect one who practices the Lotus Sutra? Kind of what I'm talking about this morning. Like, it can seem that way as you practice, that why am I not getting that treasure tower? Why isn't everything made of gold now? I'm exaggerating, but we tend to think in hyperbole, don't we? The truth is, change is incremental. But all of a sudden, in those incremental changes, it's kind of like the snow accumulating on high mountains. It gets thicker and thicker, and you can't tell how thick it is. And, then what? A mountain goat jumps from one rock to another, and that little bit of sound vibration goes through, and a little bit of snow kind of trickles off the top, and then the sheet moves a little. And the next thing you know, you got an avalanche. It starts with a small thing. Nevertheless, Nichiren says, people doubt me. And I myself wonder, why don't these gods and deities, why don't they come and help me? These forces, right? They made vows to the Buddha. That's what we read in the stories, right? They made vows to the Buddha to protect one who practices the Lotus Sutra. We all hear that. Our practice will protect us. The world, the universe will come to our aid. We have all these wonderful stories and ways of understanding energy, because that's what it's about. Energies understood, perceived, created by, influenced by mind, which is energy. I would think, therefore, that they should hurriedly come to his aid, calling him one who practices the Lotus Sutra and carrying out their promise to the Buddha, even if they have suspicions about him. Shouldn't the universe itself come support me? I'm doing the thing. It's easy to feel that way, kind of overwhelmed. That's what this morning's talk has been about. Yet none have come to help me, none that you can see. We're not all knowing, right? Not all the time anyway. Does that mean that I'm not the one who practices the Lotus Sutra? Am I not doing this right? I mean, look at how many people are questioning me, wanting to kill me and banish me just because I'm saying the emperor is naked. Well, maybe he's not naked. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe it's just me. Oh, Nichiren, so human. Since this question is the basis of this writing and of cardinal importance in my life, I will take this up again and again in order to find a definite answer. Thank you, Nichiren. I need Nichiren to do this because I need to be convinced every now and again, sometimes a lot, that what I'm doing is significant, has meaning, purpose, or am I just entertaining myself? Or worse, deluding myself, which is what I'm trying to get rid of, right? Delusion. Passing through the state of Xu, Chi-Cha of Wu in ancient China is said to have seen the Lord of Xu and sensed that the Lord was envious of his treasured sword given by their king. Realizing that he had first to perform a royal mission, Chi-Cha decided to present the sword to the Lord on his way back. Oop, where'd my eyes go? Okay. However, the Lord was already dead when Chi-Cha tried to see him again. Now, of course, you have to understand, when people travel back in those days, travel down to meet somebody would take days and maybe weeks or longer. So this is the story, an ancient Chinese story, or a gentleman who, on his path to going somewhere, meets up with somebody who's envious of something he possesses and makes a commitment, a mental note, when I come back through here, I'll give it to him. So, you know how when something happens and it's only after you go on for a few days that you think on it and you go, I know why this is on my mind. I need to just do that. You're already gone, but you make a commitment to address that later, right? That's what he's talking about. Therefore, it is said he placed the sword on the Lord's tomb to carry out what he had promised in his heart. The guy died by the time he came back through town, so he thought, well, I'm still going to do what I felt like needed to do, even though, he's no longer here. Kind of a mystical, magical way of thinking. But the story's about the commitment, right? A man named Wang Shu is said to have paid for drinking water from a river by throwing coins in it. Kind of this universe has to stay in balance. I need to do things that are equitable, blah, blah, blah. While Hun Yen followed his slain lord in death, he cut open his own stomach and inserted his lord's liver in it. These are examples of wise men repaying favors that they received. It's this not abusing the balance in the universe. When you gain from someone else, you pay back that gains as a form of equanimity, right? It's kind of a basic, I know humans don't think that way much anymore, but it's still part of our nature. It's still an honorable thing, right? To not be seen by yourself, least of all, as abusive, as taking advantage. Yeah? Even though you may gain an advantage for a bit, you keep a balance sheet of those you need to repay for that opportunity. So that's what this is about. How much more would great sages like Shariputra and Kashyapa repay favors, upholding the 250 precepts and 3,000 rules of dignified conduct without fail, and free of delusions in view and desire? They won freedom from the 6 realms of transmigration, right? The 6 lower realms. It's talking about Hinayana, Agama, early practitioners of Buddhism. They are leaders of the king of the Brahma heaven, Indra, gods and deities, and eyes of all the people. Aren't they owed remuneration, equanimity? Yeah. Nevertheless, in those sutras, preached 40 years or so before the Lotus Sutra, they were discarded as being unable to obtain Buddhahood. There's that old saw again, right? As much as these people dedicated their lives, Shakyamuni, their great teacher, the one they were trying hardest to emulate, he said, no, not good enough. By taking the pill of immortality, interesting word to use, the discussion I heard on a Majority Report, this woman referred to this constant negative attitude about hopelessness as the black pill. Interesting, isn't it? The Lotus Sutra, this pill of immortality, they were assured of obtaining Buddhahood as though a roasted seed would germinate, a broken rock would become whole again, and a dead tree would bear flowers and fruit. Not having formally become Buddhas by going through the 8 stages in the life of the Buddha, how could they afford to forget what they owed to this sutra? If they did, they would be not only inferior to such wise men as Chicha and Huang Guan, but also similar to those beasts that bite the hand that feeds them. A turtle, which had been saved by a man named Mao Pao in Qin, China, is said to have never forgotten his kindness and came to help him escape across a river when he was defeated in battle. Han Emperor Wu Ti is said to have released a large fish he caught in Lake Kunming. In gratitude, it is said that the fish, at night, presented him with a large gem. Even beasts repay the kindness they receive, not to mention those great sages. Venerable Ananda. Now you know why he's on this rant, right? He started saying, look, I'm trying the best I can with scholarship and clarity to exercise, to put into practice Shakyamuni's great teaching of the Lotus Sutra. And I see how so many people, all of Japan actually in his day, is doing it wrong. So am I not supposed to point that out? The teachings of Shakyamuni demand that I do. So why am I not getting the support that I need? Why are people trying to kill me? On the one hand, I consider it very validating that they're trying to kill me because Shakyamuni said, when you tell the truth, people ain't going to like it. Right? So it's validation. But at the same time, man, I need some relief. It's quixotic, isn't it? So that's why he keeps saying, there's this balance sheet. Where's my payoff? He's human. Venerable Ananda was the second son of King Dronodana, while Venerable Rahula was a grandson of King Suddhodana, right? Siddhartha's dad. Born into families of high social standing and having attained the stage of arhats, they both had been considered as having no possibility of obtaining Buddhahood. During the 8-year preaching of the Lotus Sutra, though, on the Mount Sacred Eagle, however, they were granted the titles of Mountain Sea Wisdom Buddha and Stepping on Flowers of 7 Treasures Buddha, respectively. So the Lotus Sutra released them from that limitation. The reason they spent their lives studying and practicing Buddhism was to attain enlightenment, and it was kept from them until the Lotus teaching. Had they not been assured of Buddhahood, thanks to the Lotus Sutra, who would respect them no matter how noble their family blood and how great their sageness had been? King Che of Xia dynasty and King Chao of the Yin or Shang dynasty were rulers of ancient China who were respected by their subjects, However, when they lost their kingdom as a result of tyrannical governing, the term Che Chao became a symbol of all that is wicked and cruel. Even men of humble origin or men with leprosy would feel offended today if they are called Che and Chao. Had it not been for the Lotus Sutra, who would know the names of as many as 1,200 or even innumerable Shravaka, who were assured of attaining Buddhahood in that sutra? Who would even listen to them? Even if 1,000 Shravaka gathered together after the death of Shakyamuni Buddha and compiled all the Buddhist scriptures, nobody would read them because they were considered to not have even the seed of Buddhahood in the teachings before the Lotus Sutra. Only by virtue of the Lotus Sutra were they then seen as, great sages. Isn't that interesting? Much less make their portraits and statues of the most venerable one. As they are, those arhats are respected and worshipped today simply because they were assured of Buddhahood in the Lotus Sutra. I doubt, shouldn't be worshipped. Not a good word for Buddhist dialogue. Without the Lotus Sutra, they would be like fish without water, monkeys without trees, infants without breasts, and subjects without a sovereign. How can they afford to discard one who practices the Lotus Sutra? Everything points to this being the way to go. What, of course, he's not talking about is that he's still alive. Could have easily been killed by now, right? But he's making his point. Listening to the pre-Lotus Sutras, those men of the Shravaka gained the eyes of heaven and eyes of wisdom in addition to the human eyes. They became more aware. It was working, their practice of Buddhism. Additionally, they gained the eyes of the Dharma as well as the eyes of the Buddha by listening to the Lotus Sutra. They should be able to see through all the worlds in the universe, not to mention being able to find one who practices the Lotus Sutra in this Saha world. Even if I, Nichiren, were so wicked a person to have abused those men of Shravaka with a slanderous word or two, or abused and struck them with sticks or swords for 1 or 2 years, or 1 or 2, 100, 1,000, 10,000, here we go with the numbers again, millions of kalpas, they would not abandon me so long as I am the one who practices the Lotus Sutra. Or not the one, but a one. For instance, do any parents abandon children who abuse them? It is said that an owl, when grown up, eats its mother, but a mother owl does not give up on its baby. A beast called a hakyo is said to devour its father when it's grown up, but its father does not abandon its child. These are acts of beasts and birds. How could great sages of Shravaka abandon one who practices the Lotus Sutra? Therefore, the 4 great men of Shravaka expressed their gratitude to the Buddha for assuring them of Buddhahood in the 4th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, understanding by conviction, saying, quote, Now we are men of Shravaka in the true sense of the word, who can cause everyone to listen to the way of the Buddha. Now we are Arhats in the true sense of the word, who deserve to receive offerings in various worlds, among various creatures, gods, men, devils, and Brahmins. You, the world-honored one, have done a great favor. Out of your deep compassion, in expounding this rare teaching of the lotus, who would be able to repay your favors? Even in innumerable kalpas, no one will be able to repay your favors, even if he tries to do so by serving you with his hands and feet, respectfully bowing his head to you, and offering you all that he has. No one will be able to repay your favors, even if he tries to do so, by carrying you on his head and shoulders, showing respect from the bottom of his heart, for kalpa is as incalculable as sands of the Ganges. No one will be able to repay your favors, even if he tries to do so by offering you delicious food, garments adorned with invaluable treasures and various beddings and medicines, or by erecting stupas made of Malayagiri sandalwood, adorned with precious treasures, or by spreading garments of treasures on the ground as offerings to you, for as incalculable kalpa, as many as sands of the Ganges. End quote. In the sutras preached before the Lotus Sutra, the men of the Shravaka were scolded and humiliated on numerous occasions in great assemblies of men and gods. Right? These are from the sutras themselves, the expedient means, the teachings, the stories. Lamenting his lack of aspiration for enlightenment, for instance, Venerable Kashyapa cried out with a loud voice that resounded throughout the entire universe, told by Vimalakirti that anyone who gives alms to him will fall into the three evil realms. Dumbfounded, Venerable Subhuti dropped his alms bowl. Having been told that Shravaka men were not entitled to receive alms, Shariputra spit out the food he had in his mouth. Unable to see the intelligence of his audience, Purna was scolded for being as stupid as putting manure in a beautifully decorated vase. The Buddha, who praised the Hinayana Agama Sutras and earnestly urged his disciples to uphold the 250 precepts earlier at the Deer Park, now suddenly changed his mind and scolded them as vehemently as this. It was a contradiction hard for them to swallow. They needed to move on, but they didn't see it that way, right? In another instance, when the Buddha scolded Devadatta for being such a fool as to suck people's saliva, Devadatta, feeling a strong resentment against the Buddha, as if he had been shot through the chest by a poisoned arrow, made a vow, quote, Gautama is not a Buddha. I am the first son of King Dronodana, elder brother of Venerable Ananda, and a member of the Gautama clan. No matter how badly I behaved, he should have told me about it privately. How could he be a Buddha or a great man when he put me to such shame in the midst of a large crowd of men and gods? Formerly, he has been my enemy who robbed me of the woman I loved. Now he is my enemy who insulted me in front of a crowd. He will remain my sworn enemy generation after generation, life after life. End quote. This is Devadatta, right? Who in the Lotus Sutra, Shakyamuni told would eventually become a Buddha. As I contemplate these instances, these great men of Shravaka were originally from non-Buddhist Brahmin families or leaders of various non-Buddhist religions in India. Therefore, they were believed and respected by kings and lay followers. Some of them were originally of high social status and from rich families. Like that matters, right? But social structures being what they are, Giving up rank and honor and suppressing their pride, they took off laymen's clothes to put on shabby-looking soil-colored robes, discarding their hosu brush of white long hair and bow and arrow, symbols of their high social standing. Like beggars, they followed Shakyamuni Buddha, each holding a beggar's bowl in hand without a house to keep themselves alive. As all the people in the whole of India were disciples and followers of non-Buddhist religions, even the Buddha himself encountered 9 great difficulties, including Devadatta's attempt to kill him by rolling a huge rock down a hill on him, King Ajatasatru's attempt at killing him by releasing a drunken elephant to attack him, and King Agnidatta's attempt at the Buddha's life by giving him only horse feed for 90 days. See, Shakyamuni had struggles pointing out truth. When the Buddha went to the Brahmin village to beg for food, he did not receive any offerings except for a bowl of water in which rice had been washed. It is also said that the Buddha was once accused of breaking a Buddhist precept by a Brahmin woman named Chinka, or Chinsa, who, placing a bowl on her stomach, claimed to have been made pregnant by Shakyamuni Buddha. Even the Buddha was confronted with difficulties such as these, not to mention his disciples who had to go through numerous difficulties. You follow that, asshole? Right? Humans never seems to change, does it? Countless people of the Shakya clan were murdered by King Virudaka of Sravasti, and many more of them were trampled to death by drunken elephants. Nun Utpalvarna was beaten to death by Devadatta, and Venerable Kalodayin was murdered and buried under horse manure, while Venerable Maudaglayana was beaten to death by a group of non-Buddhists armed with bamboo sticks. Moreover, the 6 influential non-Buddhist masters joined forces in appealing to such powerful kings as Ajatasattu and Prasenajit, saying, quote, Shakyamuni is the most evil man in this world, in Jambudvipa, not just India, but the universe, basically. Wherever he goes, there are 3 calamities and 7 disasters. Just as many rivers flow into an ocean and many trees grow on a huge mountain, many evil men such as Kashyapa, Shariputra, and Maudgalyana and Subhuti gather around Shakyamuni. The primary duties of a man are to be a loyal subject and filial child. However, they are fooled by Shakyamuni into renouncing their families against parental wishes. They hide themselves in the mountains against the royal ordinance. As such, they should not be allowed to stay in the country. It is due to their presence that we have frequent cosmic disorders and natural calamities in our lands these years, end quote. So here they are, backstabbing Shakyamuni any way they can to get him the hell out of town, right? Because he's a competitor. He's making them look bad. Can't have that. These were difficult enough to bear, but there was more to come, making it hard for them to follow the Buddha. Not knowing what to do upon being scolded and shamed so often by the Buddha in front of a great crowd of men and gods, they only remained bewildered. Why am I doing this? Right? The heaviest blow of all hit them when Shakyamuni Buddha stated in the Vimalakirti Sutra, those who offer alms to you, men of Shravaka, cannot be called those who sow the seeds of the fertile rice fields where the seed of Buddhahood can germinate and grow. They're wasting their times. They're making offerings thinking it will benefit them, but they're making offerings to worthless men. Those who give offerings to you will fall into the 3 evil realms of hell, hunger, and animality. This was when the Buddha was staying in the Arapali garden, where an immeasurably large crowd gathered, including the king of the Brahma heaven, Indra, the sun god and the moon god, the four heavenly kings, and the gods and dragon gods in the heaven and earth. Right? We've talked about this before, this calling forth of all these mental states, all of these potential states. So as I'm talking to you, I could say I'm talking to you, John, or Peter, or June, or, right? Georgina, hi. But in actuality, with any success, this video will speak to many people, many who haven't liked or subscribed to this channel yet. There's a reminder. Please do that. Right? So this is how every sutra begins, right? By establishing the audience that this sermon is for. The Buddha declared, quote, "Those gods and men who give offerings to monks like Subhuti, they'll all fall into the three evil realms." You're wasting your time. How could they, those gods and men who heard him say this, present offerings to such men of Shravakas? Wouldn't they be embarrassed to do so? After all, it appeared that the Buddha was trying to kill off those men of the two vehicles. Right-hearted men felt that he was too severe. Those Hinayana sages were barely able to sustain their lives with the offerings given to Shakyamuni Buddha. As I contemplate this, if Shakyamuni Buddha had passed away after preaching only 40 years or so, without spreading the lotus in the last 8 years, who would have given offerings to these respectable people? They would certainly be in the realm of hungry spirits, alive. However, just as the sun in spring melts away the ice and strong winds shake off all the dew, those sutras preached in some 40 years were discredited at once by one statement in the preaching of the chapter of the Sutra of Infinite Meaning. The truth has not yet been revealed. End quote. Just as the strong wind disperses dark clouds, revealing the full moon in the sky, and the sun shines in the clear sky, it was made shiningly clear that, quote, the Buddha reveals the truth after preaching the provisional Dharma for a long time, end quote. It was stated in the Lotus Sutra, the spotless mirror, in the indisputable words of the Buddha, Shakyamuni, as clear as the sun and the moon in the sky, that men like Shariputra and Kashyapa could obtain Buddhahood, and that it would be that they would be flower light Buddha and light Buddha respectively in the future. So basically all of that derision was about what you're practicing as the end all be all of Buddhism. You got to let go of that. You're stuck. You're attached to an early teaching. That ain't it anymore. All of these teachings that Nichiren is talking about that deride Shariputra, Devadatta, all these earlier monks, are Mahayana. And these monks stopped growing once they had studied and memorized and recited the Hinayana. They were just kind of rote following along in the Buddha, in Shakyamuni's travels, but they were attached to something they thought they had achieved with the earlier teachings. They weren't growing anymore. That's why he was deriding them. And now finally he tells them, you can attain Buddhahood. You ain't there yet. You can with this teaching. You follow the sequence now? That was the very reason why lay followers among gods and men after the death of Shakyamuni Buddha continued to look up those Hinayana sages as if they were Buddhas. Oh, you guys can do this. Help me, right? Help me understand. When the water is clear, the moon is bound to be reflected in it. When the wind blows, trees and grasses are bound to bend. So, when there is one who practices the Lotus Sutra, those sages, such as Shariputra and Kasyapa, should come to see him, even if it means that they have to overcome such obstacles as great fires or huge rocks. Kasyapa is said to have begun meditation to wait for the Buddha Maitreya, but this is not the time for him to do so. Sorry. I know this is a spam call. Yep. How rude. I wonder, Nichiren says, why they've not rushed to rescue the one who practices the Lotus Sutra when his life is at stake. Well, Nichiren, they have. You were supposed to be beheaded, and simply through conversation of the correct teachings of the Lotus Sutra, he was able to convince all those soldiers, that whole retinue that marched him out to be beheaded, they couldn't do it. And reporting back to their lord, the elite that sent them out there to kill him, they said they couldn't do it. They had some excuse for it. The Lord said, well, just keep on marching then and take him out to that godforsaken island and let him die out there. He must have been so frustrated, right? The regent. Are we not in the last 500-year period, Nichiren asks, at the beginning of the latter age of degeneration? Am I not doing, in other words, exactly as Shakyamuni prescribed for this time? We're almost done with this chapter, so I'm going to go on. Are these widely propagated scriptural words false? Am I, Nichiren, not one who practices the Lotus Sutra? Are they protecting those great liars of the Zen school who insist that the truth cannot be expressed in writing and therefore the Lotus Sutra is not the truth? Well, of course, it wasn't expressed in writing. It was expressed in song, but it has been written down over the years. So, a little disconnect there. Are they defending the Pure Land sect with deciding to, quote, abandon, close, and put aside and cast away, end quote, everything except Pure Land doctrine, published by the collection of passages on the Nembutsu on word block prints, urging that the gate to the Lotus Sutra be closed, the sutra be thrown away, and the Lotus temples to be closed down? Sounds quite political. Political in the sense that those arguments aren't made on the basis of Shakyamuni's teaching. They're made on the avarice and will of those leaders of these other schools. Difference, yeah? Or is it that the gods and deities, shying away from the great difficulties in the decadent world, do not descend to help the one who practices the Lotus Sutra in spite of their vow before the Buddha to do so? Both the sun and moon are still in the sky, Mount Sumero still exists, the tides of the sea still rise and ebb, and the 4 seasons come and go in order. Why is it then that no one comes to help the one who practices the Lotus Sutra? This doubt of mine grows greater and greater. Now, of course, this is him telling a story of his life in the context of Japan. But as I've already pointed out, he's not singling out the fact that he's still alive, that he's been able to survive, get through, rise above, work around. Several moments when he should have been dead, that he was expressly going to be killed. And yet, here he is. Is that not the gods and the universe and all of these vows of these great men coming to his assistance? Of course it is. But he's setting us up, right? So now the next chapter, the 3,000 existences contained in one thought. doctrine preached in the theoreticals. We keep coming back to this. I keep pointing this out. The core of the teachings is this: you have to understand the entire mechanism of life, the universe, moment to moment, with all potential, manifesting as tendencies and conditions present themselves. So I'm interested how he's once again bringing up this doctrine, and how is he going to use it in reference to the story he's telling. For that, you'll have to tune into the next video. In the meantime, profound appreciation for your participation. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you can, patreon.com/TLK. Offer us a little something, either once or what do they call it? Recurring. Just to keep the mechanism of this channel and the rest of the resources going. I'm thinking of getting back into assembling some books. I haven't, I did a complete rewrite of all of the Gosho Zenshu to remove all the cultural bias and the misleading words, to clean it up so that it's much easier to just see directly Nichiren's intent and words in support of the Lotus Sutra and in the meaning of what he was saying in large print, so it's easier to read. That's available on the lulu.com/spotlight/Kwun store. The links are all over this video. I'm considering doing something similar with these translations because they're rife with cultural bias. Or maybe something completely other. If you have time to go to that bookstore and look around, there's a lot of books there. But if you think there's a glaring void, something that you would like to hear me expound upon with research, not just my opinion, of course, but I always present information and then present my insights and understanding of that information as a way to present you with as much resource as possible for you to gain your own insights. So if there's a publication, like recently I did the personages on the Gohonzon map, to give some idea of what's going on this mandala, why Nichiren created it the way he did, and the mental aspects of life that are represented in the different personages, along with a lot of history, all from research and experience on that. So that kind of thing. If you have a suggestion for, hey, could you write in depth on this and give me a subject, I would like to entertain your thoughts and see what you guys, what seems to be missing from your scholarship. What seems to be missing from your confidence? What do you need to truly get your teeth sunk into to go, yes, this is how I'm practicing. This is what this means. My search, my instantiation of Buddha in mind. I just need this one doubt to be kind of explored and flushed out. Or, just like and subscribe. Thank you for being here. Patrons, those of you who are helping me through Patreon and PayPal, you're keeping this broadcast alive. And so thank you for all of us. And I'll see you in the next one. Better be here. Okay. Bye for now.